Your Excellencies, friends of SID, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the SID for International Development, it is a pleasure for me to welcome you to this launch of the State of East Africa Report 2012. My name is Arthur Moliro, and I'm the Deputy Managing Director of the Secretariat of the International SID for International Development in Rome, and also the Chief Executive of the Eastern Africa Regional Office. The Society for International Development, as some of you may know, is an institution that has a long history of trying to promote debate and dialogue on topical issues. Since its formation in 1957, SID has managed to extend its operations to different corners of the world, in virtually all continents, and through our members, who today number over 3,000, and our chapters, which are over 50 in some 45 countries. I think SID is a keen promoter of dialogue and is proud to be associated with individuals such as yourself, who join us in promoting conversations on those topics that are important and topical to our development goals.
The East African community, I think, as we are all aware, and has been said oftentimes, is arguably Africa's most successful regional integration project. And we at SID are greatly honored and feel very proud to be associated with such a successful venture. The 5-member partnership is increasingly attracting attention from far and wide. Already, as we are aware, a number of countries neighboring this region have either applied to join or have indicated willingness to become members. It is also attracting attention from farther afield for its tremendous potential. It's not often those of us who are here, those of us who are citizens of East Africa, appreciate this. But I think, as you will see in the presentation that my colleagues will do later, as more and more of the international community actually pay greater attention to this region, I think many of us are beginning to wake up to the fact that this is not a region that just attracts others because of its sandy beaches and its great wildlife. There's a lot more going on in this region than just that. We are no longer just being seen as a tourist destination. There's a lot more in this region than just attracting tourists. A successful navigation of the region's future hinges on substantive collaboration among all stakeholders. The East African Community integration process is not a project for the political, or for that matter, the business class only. The integration is about us all. We all have a role to play in this. It's for us as citizens of East Africa, as well as our partners, who can make this integration work. Citizens of the region from all walks of life have a stake in it, and their voices must also be heard. The publication that we shall be launching today is part of efforts on the part of SID to try and contribute to these dialogues, to try and provide the knowledge, information that will be useful for people to have informed discussions. On our part, as the SID Regional Office, we commit ourselves to continue to play the role of a convener of critical dialogue on what the integration means for this region. SID will continue to create the spaces in which such dialogue will be conducted.
All our work is very much geared towards achieving East African integration, the East African dream of integration, and the treaty, and of course the East African Community's development strategy. We do that by working with a quite diverse set of actors: the private sector, governments, civil society, and also clearly the regional institutions, the East African Community. And I must say I'm delighted to be here with Secretary General today. But our partnership with SID, we're very excited about it, Trademark. It's really about supporting the development of these East Africa reports over the next few years to 2014. It's a follow-up to the reports that were done between 2006 and 2008, and we anticipate that this partnership will really help to inform civil society organizations and the private sector on opportunities for effective engagement with the regional integration process. As also will provide key institutions such as the East African Community with the facts and figures in national governments with relevant and timely data in order to help policy making. That's our partnership. But thinking about the report that's going to be presented to you, there's been a lot of progress in East Africa. Really, East Africa is booming, and as we sometimes say, the East African lion is beginning to roar. Trade is increasing, and investment is really coming up. I heard an article the other day saying that investment firms that don't have representation in East Africa aren't really anywhere in terms of global investment. I think as well, within the context, there is a general lack of knowledge around the benefits of regional integration across East Africa. And what we need is the sort of report that we're going to get today. Really intelligible data on regional integration that looks at long-term trends and thinks consistently about the issues at stake, and is a way of trying to engage with East African citizens. The dialogue is very important, and Aidan and the team will be talking about how East Africans can take charge of their own development. The private sector and civil society will play a key role in this whole process. We're quite excited because the report also talks about infrastructure, something at Trademark East Africa we work on a lot. We're investing around $120 million in the development of border posts and port infrastructure across the region. But infrastructure will be important to unlock the potential of East Africa's economic space. And let's face it, an efficient transport system that doesn't cost much, a huge amount more than Europe and the US. I think at the moment the costs are around 70% higher than those regions. It's going to be critical to ensuring East African competitiveness, particularly faster border crossings and reduced red tape and harmonized systems.
The purpose of the report is really fourfold. One, to inform, provide as much data and as recent data as we can on a number of indicators. Two, to look at that data, to analyze its trends and to see what it might be showing. What are the surprises? What are the interesting things that are emerging that we may not have thought about? And when you connect some data with others and you look at what the picture is emerging, it can also be very interesting. We'll share some of those with you. The third one is, I think as Frank was mentioning as he was speaking here, to try and see how this sparks our imagination as to where this region could be in the future. And that future could be a very good and rosy one, or that future could be full of challenges if we don't really come to grips with what we're facing at the moment, if we don't understand where it is that we're starting from. And the fourth and very important point is that we hope this report will spark lots and lots and lots of conversations. Controversial ones, conversations about compromise, conversations about our own self-confidence, especially in dealing with the interest that is intensifying about the East African region. I think both Frank and Ali mentioned that. And we'd like to share some indicators of how that interest is actually manifesting itself in the region. So we want to start with sort of the big picture. And we've really looked at two things. As the theme of the report says, deepening integration and intensifying challenges. There are signs of policy convergence, and we'll tell you what that is. And infrastructure development has also improved through this coordinated efforts of member states to try and do a lot more regional infrastructure projects and not just national ones. So here's the trade. You can see this is the growth in regional trade, in global trade from the region. The green arrow is our exports to the world. The red arrow is our imports from the world. So by 2010, we imported about $26 billion worth of imports and exported about $11.1 billion to the rest of the world. The trade within East Africa has also doubled from 2.2 billion to 4.1 billion over a 5-year period since the customs union came into effect. But what is interesting, and this is perhaps one of the challenges, is that the proportion of our trade, total trade as a region, that we do with one another stays relatively small. We have just 21% of our total exports are actually exports to one another. And about 8 to 7% of our total imports are imports with one another. The rest is with the rest of the world. So this is something to think about. Intra-regional trade, how can that be boosted to tie ourselves together further? Then, we talk about trade. Then we looked at the numbers and tried to see who's sending what to which country. So we looked and thought interesting statistics are emerging here in terms of informal trade. Let me explain this table a little bit. If you look at Kenya reporting exports to Uganda, it was $657 million. That's what Kenya said we exported to Uganda. So what Uganda said they imported from Kenya was $549 million. So where's the difference? But if you add all of this up, you see the volume of what we call this informal trade went from about 300 million to about 500 million over a period of 5 years. Foreign direct investment has increased, went from 688 million to 1.7 billion in a 10-year period. But like I said, it's not just from outside the region, but within the region as well, there is a lot of activity. Now, the other thing that we're also doing in terms of integrating with the rest of the world is East Africans are going out of East Africa also to seek opportunities in the outside world. The golden color there, you can see are the Kenyans who seem to be wanting to leave and go off to, where are they going? To the United States here, and the OECD countries. So we calculated total remittances coming to 2.8 billion in 2010, up from 791 million in 2000 over this period. The regional projects, you've seen, those of you who drive between Arusha and Nairobi have seen this wonderful new road that's been put up as a regional project funded by the African Development Bank as part of their confidence in the fact that this is a very exciting region that needs to be connected much more and much more densely. 95% of the cargo is carried on our roads. So the rail system in terms of carrying cargo is really underperforming. But there's investment going into it. The Chinese, RVR, the Tazara, they're trying to revive the railway sector. But a lot of the cargo, all of that 25 billion in imports from the rest of the world is coming on our roads. The hints of policy convergence. When we looked at the numbers, we saw the increase in per capita healthcare spending. We saw a very good performance in terms of gross enrollment ratio for primary school enrollment. And when you look around, I think it's Uganda who started with universal primary education, and the other countries copied very quickly. Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, I think has had it for a while. Burundi.
Intensifying challenges. What we found is poverty still remains a stubborn issue, with 53 million East Africans living under the poverty line. Achieving food security remains a chronic problem, as demonstrated by the drought last year that affected Kenya and Ethiopia and parts of most of Somalia. So mixed results in poverty. What we did is basically take baseline surveys of all the poverty incidents of all East African countries. And then we tried to cross-reference it with the most up-to-date poverty incidents. Most of them, the most recent was in Rwanda, and followed by Burundi. By 2030, East Africa will account for 40% of sub-Saharan Africa and a total population. Now, if the EAC tries to expand to include South Sudan, Sudan, Ethiopia, and the DRC, we will still account for 40% of the total sub-Saharan African population, but our political clout and economic clout will be unmatched. Now, what are the long-term implications? As Aidan mentioned, with respect to MDG 3, which is universal primary education, universal primary access to education, we're doing pretty well. All of them have achieved this MDG goal. Everyone has over 100% of gross enrollment rates. Things get very tricky when we start thinking about secondary education. We have a huge drop in each of the years between 2002 and 2009. I think only with Kenya with the highest, with 45% gross enrollment rates in secondary education. So what are the long-term effects about this? With the conjunction of having children who are malnourished, not going to secondary education, how does that affect the labor force? Maybe not in 5 years, but in 10, 20 years. Now, intensifying global interest. As I mentioned, this region is hot. And we can explain it in many, many ways. We like to also think about more cultural exchanges. And we've had Turkish Airlines, Qatar Airways, and British Airways increasing their intensity of flights to the region. What are they interested in? Are they trying to win our hearts and minds, or are they just trying to make money? And then we have the ever-elusive AFRICOM. Not to tickle everyone's brains a little bit, but counterterrorism funding has grown exponentially between 2005 and 2010. This may be one indicator of the fact that this region is being paid attention to. Everyone sees it as an important geostrategic asset. Now, Kenya is considered a frontline nation as part of US anti-terrorism assistance, and ranks only behind Afghanistan, Jordan, and Pakistan, which was very, very interesting to me.